We so appreciate your time and for being such a great advocate of Angelo State University as an alum. We're thankful for your words and all the information about Buckner and getting Buckner established and what you do. At this time, I would love to invite those that are here in the C.J. Davidson who have a question for Dr. Reyes that feel comfortable to come up and ask a question. I see one already ready. Come on up, Kate.
Thank you so much for your presentation. A little bit earlier, you drew a distinction between a calling and a career. So I guess you were kind of saying something like, if you don't have a calling, if you don't have a purpose, then any career at all will do. So what advice do you have for a young person who is confident in their calling and their purpose, but who is not sure which career will actually fulfill that purpose? Thank you very much.
Others here that would like to ask Dr. Reyes a question? Awesome. Kristen, I'll introduce Kristen. Dr. Reyes, this is our student government association president, Kristen Kilpatrick.
Hi, hello. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. So, do you have any advice on working cohesively with people who have different leadership styles or priorities under the same mission that you may clash with? Yes, it did. My next question is, what has been your greatest learning curve, and how has that helped you grow?
Yeah, well, one of my greatest learning curves has been that when they turn out the lights, it's time to leave the library. Because one time I was studying in the ASU library, and I was cramming for a test, and I totally blocked everything out. And they flashed the lights, and I ignored that like a nuisance. Like, why are they doing that? Just totally ignored it. And then about the third or fourth time when they turned the lights off, they stayed off. I thought, why did they turn the lights off? So I walked around the ASU library. I was on the second floor, back in the corner, and you know what? Nobody was in the library. And they closed the library, and so I thought, well, I'll just walk out the normal walk, and I'll be gone. But I couldn't do it because the doors were chained in the front. I couldn't get out, so I had to figure out how to call security, the ASU security, come and let me out. So I guess one of my learning curves is when they turn the lights out, it's time to go home. But I think that one of my steepest learning curves has had to is my work with the governing board, with the board of trustees. The board can be as large as 27, but we've got it at about 18 right now. And I think just working with boards as the top governing authority of our organization is a challenge. You have 18 different people, 18 different walks of life, 18 different competencies, read up on governance and how boards work. And someday you might be a CEO standing in front of a for-profit. You might be a CEO of a nonprofit organization. Working with the board is something that I encourage every student to consider learning about. And if you haven't learned it in a book or a class, you can volunteer to serve on the board, which will give you a whole nother education to go through the experience. So I serve on some other boards as well. And there is this thing called best practices. And what do the best boards do? And what are the best practices?
Thank you.
Dr. Reyes, I have a question for you. You obviously what like Kevin Pepper, Kimberly Adams, Jamie Aiken, and myself, and the rest of our development team. One of the things that we love doing, especially all of us are also alumni of Angelo State University, but we love connecting with our alumni, and we love connecting alumni to other alumni. You have some fantastic other alums that work there at Buckner, but why do you continue to stay connected to your friends who also went to Angelo State University, and why is it important for you to stay connected to your alma mater?
Well, I believe in, I don't know if I can do it, but I believe in brand power. And, I look back at how I got to Angelo State, right? I'm really the accidental and unintentional student. So I didn't even want to go to college. I didn't think I had to until my pastor said, no, you got to go. So once I embraced, for me, and ended there and ended up at Angelo State, I really came to appreciate the investment of professors who prepared their whole lives to train me and educate me. They were fulfilling their calling, their vocation, and preparing me for future ministry. And I just feel a sense of gratitude and maybe debt, right, to hold that institution that prepared me. My professors may not have known that they were preparing a future pastor and minister or doing, but they were, right? And so I feel a sense of obligation, a sense of debt. And then I think it's important to connect with our peer alumni just to support each other. Gilbert Montes was the sports writer for the Rand newspaper back when we were students. He went to work for the Standard Times and then GTE, was communications. He came to work, was working here at a local church. I hired him on the Buckner staff. Jackson is doing great work. There's others in Midland, Patricia Acosta. She'll be with me on campus maybe next week when I'm there. So anytime I find a Ram, I try to connect them and say, hey, man, the Rams are running this organization right now. So let's make the best of it, and let's work together, and let's find more Rams who can come and help us or maybe support us in some way. But Rams forever. I'm glad to see we're part of the Texas Tech institution. One of my trustees at Buckner was also a board of regents for Texas Tech University. And so, it's West Texas. We know how to do things right and get things done. And so it's great to be there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Reyes. Are there any other questions from here in the CJ? Well, Dr. Reyes, on behalf of Angelo State University and the ASU Alumni Association and our administrative team, thank you so much for your time this afternoon for kicking off this inaugural Ram Talks event. And I know we're looking forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Hey, all right, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure. I hope it was helpful. And you've got the PowerPoint if anybody wants a copy.
Absolutely.
That's just fine. So I look forward to being on campus again sometime in the future.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Reyes. So thank you to those who are in the room this afternoon. Our second session is going to start at 2:30. It's a panel discussion that will be going from college to career on transferable skills. We'll have 3 different panelists from 3 very different industries. Joining our employer relations coordinator from our career development office, Meredith Copeland, to talk more about their I chose stories, but also how to go from college to career. So we'd love to see you back here at 2:30, and feel free to bring a friend. Thanks.
my audio more than anything.
That helps.
Yeah, nobody's within like 40 feet of me. I think I'm okay.
Perfect. Just making sure that they can hear you through the mask.
Yep.
And I hear I got it. So hopefully that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
hopefully successful.
I don't know. We'll see. We have a list of questions, so if you need another one for the next speaker, just let me know. Josh, do we need to keep talking?
Test 1, 2.
Hola, ¿cómo estás? Okay, we can keep talking. So what kind of vacation are we going on this summer, Jake?
We're talking about maybe going to the beach. So I wish I could say it was going to be like an awesome beach, but mostly Padre, or at least that somewhere around.
See, Port Aransas is where we like to go, just to go.
Yeah, that's more likely. I just mean like Padre Island area more than anything.
Do you ever go to Slitterbond while you're down there?
Actually, like 2 years ago, we just did a Schlitterbahn trip, and my wife's out some of the resort area stuff, Schlitterbahn only,
Okay,
and it was
Jake, they
really
need me to talk now.
okay.
What can I do for you, Mr. Howard? My maiden name that's now my daughter's name. It works. It works.
So we're good.
It works. Okay, they want me to keep talking. So we're just, we went down to Slitterbahn 2 years ago, and I got the worst sunburn. My hands were sunburned. Like, it was wild and crazy. But come to find out, that was the time period that I was pregnant with my daughter. So it was very interesting. Had no idea.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, there's
very rough.
But yeah, we went to Slitterbahn down there and had just an absolute blast. But every time we go to Slitterbahn in New Braunfels, we go to the old section, and we never make it over to the new section because we have so much fun at the old section.
The old one is fun, yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Get to know your Alumni Association director.
While we're going on our family vacations. Okay, so now we'll start talking about Great Wolf.
Did something change?
Now they're having a high-tech conversation. So I'm trying to listen to see what they did, but I think they've got it figured out. Do you have it figured out now? Always.
I'm passing through. I had to catch up on something.
No, 3 foot taller climbing on everything. Everything. No. Well, now it's a matter of, can you believe she's doing this?
Can everybody hear me?
We can now.
Says I'm unmuted. Okay, perfect. We will work through all the audio problems together. We'll get through it, but I appreciate everybody's patience. So, Amber, let's go to you. Talk to us a little bit about you, your industry, and your role, as well as why you chose ASU.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for having me. It's definitely a pleasure. So I'm actually from San Angelo, graduated from Central High School. So when it was time to pick which college to go to, my parents kind of incentivized me to stay local for the first year and then kind of spread my wings and see where I wanted to go. But really, just like the culture and everything that Randy spoke to, it was something that after my first year there, I just decided that that was home for me. And so I finished up my undergrad there and then did a year of an MBA program there at Angelo State. So I actually work in staffing. So I'm a specialized firm with Robert Half, and I primarily focus on individuals that have accounting and finance backgrounds. I've been with the company for 11 years, and I've worked in 2 different offices. In Midland, Texas is where I spent 7 years. And then the last 4, I've been up here in Oklahoma City working for the Oklahoma office. And I have recently moved over to our side that does just direct placement. So before I focused on contract and contract to hire, and now I do direct hire placement in the accounting and finance field. And so with everything that we do there, kind of we focus, kind of like Meredith was saying, those transferable skills really come into play as far as interviewing and what you do for your next step as far as your opportunities. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Amber. And last but certainly not least, Richard, I want to go with you. You are another alum. So tell us about your role, your industry, and why you chose Angelo State.
For sure. I'm a 2007 graduate of Angelo State University. I've got a biology degree, and I went into insurance and real estate and some other things after college. So you never know the journey that you're going to take. Why I chose ASU is I am from Sweetwater, Texas. Couldn't go to Abilene because they were all private Christian schools and we couldn't afford to do that. So San Angelo was my next option besides Lubbock. I applied there first. I had a high ACT score and they said, yes, we want you. And I never applied anywhere else. So that's what led me on my journey to Angelo State.
Well, I thank you all for being here and thank you for giving us a little bit about that background. And let's really just jump right on in. And so as we set the ground rules, if you guys have any follow-ups to anybody who answers a question, feel free to hop in and let me know that you've got a comment to say. But I really want to start first. And Randy, we'll go straight with you with the first question. And that is, what has helped you get to where you are today? And what advice would you give others who are wanting to set off in a similar direction?
You know, I'll say 2 things. Being willing to take on new stuff, not being afraid of the challenge, seeking out new opportunities to show your skills and show others what you can do. The second thing that I think is very important is becoming known as a finisher, someone who meets your commitments that they can trust to get the job done and meets those deadlines with a quality product that they can depend on.
Well, I also know that Amber and Richard, knowing their background, they went a vastly different direction than what they went to school for. And so let's hop in and give you guys an option to answer that question as well. What has helped you get to where you are and what advice would you give others? Amber, we'll go with you. I think you may be muted, Amber. No? Let's see.
Okay, keep trying to do it for me. Am I unmuted now? Okay.
There we go.
I would also say find yourself a mentor, someone that you can kind of go to that has been in the industry that you're in, and don't be afraid to kind of ask questions. I think that helped me a lot just because it helped me understand the bigger picture behind things versus just being told what to do. Knowing kind of the why behind things just helps you really see what your manager sees and just what the overall company sees as far as, and then also too, where you see yourself within that company down the road.
Richard, I'll let you go.
All right. So I came out in the worst job market, arguably, since the Great Depression in 2008, end of 2007. So having a bachelor's in biology, I didn't have a whole lot of options as far as if I wanted to continue my education, that was one. Potentially go teach or go work for Texas Parks and Wildlife and make about 25 grand a year. None of those really sound appealing. And so I obviously went a different route into insurance. But I will tell you what I had to do was I had to learn how to sell. And I think that we're all in sales on some level. And I think that's what some people miss, whether you're selling education or selling yourself or selling a product, or if you're like Amber and you're recruiting, there's always going to be sales. So learning how to do that, selling life insurance early in my career was one of the best things that I could have ever done because I had to learn how to sink or swim.
Okay. Well, kind of in the same direction, we know that we've seen a lot of changes in about the last 5 years. And so, Richard, we'll just start with you and kind of work backwards that same direction. What has been the biggest change in the last 5 years, and what do you predict in your industry will be the change in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, for sure. I think that what's happened in the last year with COVID has even expedited some of the things that were already happening. And so what we've seen is we see way less interaction in the office face-to-face than we did 5 years ago, or even 2 or 3 years ago. We do more through Skype or through email, text even. When I first got into the industry, if somebody was, say, past due on their bill, we called them. The last 2 or 3 years exclusively, we use text, and we have actually a better response rate. And so, I mean, I think using technology in those areas has really changed in the past couple of years, as well as on the side that I'm not directly involved with, on a claims side and an actuarial side, we're using a lot of artificial intelligence and computer learning to where as a company, we can tell if a vehicle's totaled with 99.9% accuracy without ever sending anybody out into the field, just based on pictures and speeds and statements. So those things have definitely disrupted and will continue to disrupt the industry and change those things. And we've had to adapt and evolve as we could through those things, especially the last year. I think we learned that we can do a lot more remotely than we ever thought we could.
Okay, Amber, what about you and your industry? I know you work with a lot of different employers. And so what changes have you seen and foresee coming?
So I was thinking more internally for us as far as technology has just changed over the 11 years that I've been with the company. Before, we had a dinosaur of a system that was proprietary, and it made it really hard to work within the system. And we've now gone to Salesforce. And so, like Richard was saying, it's allowing more of that AI to come in and bring candidates to us that maybe we would have missed before. And the same thing with clients, bringing in clients to let us know about who's looking. And we've even now adopted a mobile app for candidates and for clients. And it just, the speed to market and the accessibility is so much more than it used to be. And so I think just kind of as we continue to grow, that it's going to get a point to where before everything was in person for us. You were in the office 8 to 5, no ifs, ands, or buts. And if you went and saw a client, you saw them on site. And now just that virtual piece allows us to do any type of meeting, whether that's through Zoom or Microsoft Teams or WebEx, and just be able to connect that way and still get all of the details that you would get meeting somebody for coffee or going to their office. And so it allows you just to work, I think, just a lot smarter and a lot more efficiently than what we were doing in the past.
All right. Well, Randy, I know you are in definitely a different industry than the other two. And so what changes have you seen? And then I'm going to also add a question onto that is what changes have come on because of the recent pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I was going to say the two things that have had the big impact are technology and COVID. I'll take the technology aspect first. technology's changed a lot since I started here 24 years ago, but yet in some ways it hasn't. When I first started here, everybody was trying to get off of their mainframes. I mean, we were working on supercomputers here, but we still had some mainframes, and everybody was moving off of those to the desktop and smaller computers. And then there came another change where everybody was moving back to virtual machines. Well, virtual machines was a concept that, the IBM mainframes did very well. Nowadays, we're all racing to move to the cloud, which I think is French for someone else's computer. Um, but the point is, the technology is constantly changing. You've got to adapt, but you've got to remember your core mission. The technology is an enabler. It can help you achieve your mission, or it can get in the way of your mission. But you got to be willing to adapt and be cognizant of those costs of the technology. You got to watch out for the shiny rock syndrome of adopting a new technology just for the sake of it. You got to really look at the business case. COVID's another big change. In the defense industry, it's probably had less impact than most other industries. I was one of those weird people who got one of those letters during the pandemic and early on in March and April when everybody was locking down that said they're an essential employee, let them travel to work. I've been in the office every day because I work in a closed area that doesn't connect to the internet, except from some certain computers. But we've adapted. We've done temperature checks, we've worn masks, they've put up dividers and all kinds of stuff like that. But it's undoubtedly changed our workforce forever. Every major employer around here has these big empty buildings for months, and they've realized they can do business without that. So there's quite a few big companies that are looking to reduce their real estate footprint and are moving to more work from home or a hybrid model where employees work. Certainly, we've been doing little to no travel lately, and more virtual things, less meeting in person. Our conference rooms here are still under quarantine, and they really encourage virtual meetings. And I think that trend's going to continue some even after the pandemic, just from the cost savings on travel and real estate, that you're going to see more and more work from alternative places.
Well, that was a great transition into my next follow-up question to that. And Amber, we'll start with you on it. And that is really, what is the most interesting trend or biggest trend that you're seeing now that we're starting to come out of this pandemic and get back to life as close to normal as we could?
So for us, we've now, the beginning of this year, have really started to see kind of the hiring market pick back up and people wanting to bring back staff that they had lost and refill some positions. But a lot of people, the remote factor is something that now is a must-have for people that are looking for new opportunities. And if it's not an option for them, then they're turning down jobs. I think that this is our new normal as far as kind of some type of hybrid or virtual setting. And so we did a survey for work, and it showed that 49% of our individuals that we work with won't accept an offer unless there's some type of virtual package that goes along with being with the position, either on site or some virtual. No one wants to be on site 100% anymore. And I think that's just, a lot of employers are going to have to start taking that into account as they have these new positions opening up.
Richard, what are you seeing as a new trend for 2021?
In our insurance business, I think the biggest thing is some of our customers who I'm used to coming in once a month and sitting down and talking to me, which they're in a demographic that may be more impacted by COVID, but they have still, even if our front door is open, dropped off payments in the payment box. I think their habits have changed. So what I've been looking at is what consumer habits have changed as far as what our customers doing. And so I think we've focused a lot more on reaching outbound versus waiting for them to come inbound, a much more proactive versus a reactive approach than we probably had in the past, because I'm not seeing the traffic indoors like I would have 2 or 3 years ago, even pre-COVID. But I think that it accelerated that trend a few years. And so I think we have to do a better job in our industry of of reaching out versus waiting.
Randy, do you have anything else to add to that? I know you really transitioned us into that question well, but anything that you would like to add, seeing from that defense industry?
No, we're ready for COVID to be over too.
Awesome. Well, now knowing that we've talked about some of these trends, we've talked about some of the changes, and Randy, we'll start with you on this one. What are some of the main traits that you guys look for when looking at a new employee?
Well, obviously the skills are important. You can't fake it. You know, if job postings have kind of required skills and desired skills, and if they don't meet those required skills, you know, it's not going to be a good fit. So that's the most important probably. The next thing I'm looking for is for people who have a proven track record of following through to their commitments, to taking ownership to stuff. Who can work well with others in teams, who can find creative ways to get the job done, even when, you know, things are getting thrown against them. You know, maybe they need something from somebody, and this person's notoriously hard to get a hold of. I had a new employee the other day, and he needed something from a very senior engineer, and I warned him that, you know, this senior engineer is kind of hard to make time for him and all that. And I've had other employees who've tried to get information out of this senior engineer, and it's just very hard to do. Well, this new engineer took a candy bar, and he took it to that guy's office and gave him a candy bar, introduced himself, and they talked for over 30 minutes, and he got what he needed. And that was a creative way. You know, he could have came up with excuses for not getting the job done. But instead he looked for a solution to the problem. And that's really what I'm looking for, is people who can solve problems without a lot of help, self-starters and self-finishers.
Richard, I want to go to you next on this, because I know that in your industry, you definitely look for a unique individual, whether it be in your office or a colleague in an office in another location. So what would you say are the most important traits that you're looking for?
Well, the first thing I say is when I get a resume, and I'm probably not the norm with everyone else, there are some jobs obviously that require some technical experience and some education that may be hard set, whether it's a CPA or, you know, they have to have a very certain education. Mine don't necessarily, so I will glance over education, but one of the things that matters most to me when I'm looking at a resume is how often are they changing jobs? Because for me, for somebody to have a good grip on what's going on in my office, to get fully licensed in insurance for property casualty, life and health, and anything else we may do, for them to be comfortable, for me to be comfortable with them on their own, it takes 12 months, 12 to 18 months. And if they're jumping around job to job every 18 months, they're probably not going to see the fruits of that labor. And I spend a lot of money if they leave in 9 or 10 months. And so what I look for is people who are looking for some longevity. And when I interview, I look more for, I've always called it skill versus will. Do they have a skill set issue or do they have a will issue? Because I can fix a lot of the skill set issues. I can train, I can teach people how to do what we do. That's actually one of my strengths, is in coaching and in training, but I can't fix will issues most of the time. That has to come from them. And so to me, I'm looking for somebody who, for lack of a better word, in a sales role is a little tweaked, because they've got to be able to handle rejection better than the general population. They've got to be able to understand if I need to sell this many, auto, it may take me 100 calls a day to do that. But if I'm failing, maybe it's 120. Or if I'm really good, maybe it's only 80. But understanding that, and that's a hard individual to find. College, no college experience. It's one of those things that a lot of times I look for people with no insurance experience, because they tend to not have bad habits either, from other places that may have trained them differently. But I'm really looking for people who are willing to work and want to make as much money as they can based on what they're worth, because obviously a lot of it's commission and bonus driven, and not everybody can do that. It's just not everybody's cup of tea. So it's a challenge at times to hire towards that.
Well, Amber, we've definitely heard some great pieces that I think everybody can agree with on both Randy and Richard. But you have a unique position where you are presenting candidates to multiple different employers. And so collectively, what would you say is your most important trait or traits that you see that your employers are looking for right now?
So, no matter what role it is, whether it's on an administrative side or it's an accounting side, I would say one of the biggest things that our employers are looking for, or our clients are looking for, is someone that can communicate well. Just because you're having to talk with so many different departments, depending on what your role is, and how do you communicate with your C-level individuals, as far as your CFOs and your controllers, can you communicate and present yourself well? I think it's one of the biggest things that a lot of employers are looking for. And then just kind of that eagerness to learn and that kind of internal drive that people have to want to continue their education in their field. And so kind of being the expert, taking on more of that initiative piece to say, hey, can I help you with this? Or can I help you with that? So someone that doesn't necessarily want to just be told what to do all day long in that micromanage piece, but be a self-starter and kind of be able to take the reins and make their own path, really is kind of what they're looking for, outside, of course, of the skill set, just because it is an accounting or finance role. And so they have to have some type of foundation to build off of.
Okay, so let's talk, we've got students that are in the room and students that are listening to us on YouTube. And this may be their first professional position. And so, Amber, I'll start with you on this one because I think you have, again, that unique skill set where you're looking for multiple different employers. What tips can you give them to uncover those transferable skills that they may have, even if they have not worked in a professional setting yet?
So I would say you have to be confident in your answers. So as you're going through an interview or you're talking with a recruiter or whoever you're talking with, you have to have confidence in not only your abilities as far as what you have done, but what you can do, and how different things that you've done within your career or even your education could help set you up for a new position or a new title. So I would say that's a big piece of it. And then also, too, being able to highlight someone's integrity. I think a lot of clients are looking for, especially with the remote piece that so many people are doing, being able to speak to the type of person that you are, the values you have. I think that also sets the tone for kind of more of those soft skills that people are looking for.
Randy or Richard, do you have anything to add to that on how to uncover those transferable skills or soft skills that somebody may have?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you can do is embrace what makes you different. I think we're taught to conform throughout school. Some people have heard me talk about this before, but we're tried to put in this little box of standardized testing or getting a degree. But embrace the things that make you different, and you'll figure out where your strengths are and what your passions are. And so, I mean, I think that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And I'm what I will call an enthusiast for life. Do things with enthusiasm. Embrace who you are. Be different if that's who you are. We're all different, but don't be afraid to show that, because in a world of, and this is I've worked for corporations, but you have 30 new hires, be the one that stands out, because people above you may not ever notice if they think you're just in the crowd with everybody else. And so it's less about soft skills, as I think confidence is a big part of it, but be enthusiastic, whether you're sweeping the floor or if you're doing reports or you're building rockets. Be enthusiastic about what you do.
Randy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this. I've heard them talk, and I certainly agree. I've done campus recruiting for Raytheon for a number of years, and I've interviewed probably thousands of students on campus. And it's very hard for college students to figure out how to make their case. And the pointers I would give is, think about your elevator speech. What really makes you unique, as Richard said, and what your strengths are. To another point, you're not strong at everything. Everybody is not an expert at everything. And I've certainly talked to students who, no matter what you ask them, they're an expert on it. And that turns off interviewers. Being able to admit that you're not an expert on that, but willing to learn about it, is a really important um, skill to know. The only other thing I'll add, a lot of employers use behavioral interviewing type styles. It's a really great way to find out about a person. And it's great to example. So internships, volunteer work, all that kind of stuff is so important to give you the experiences that you can tell them about when you've had to work with a difficult coworker or something about that. Because really that's where you really separate. Not that there's good answers to some of those behavioral interviewing questions, but I can tell you they're bad. You'll know it when you hear it, that they would not work well in your environment. And giving yourself those experiences in college, whether it be an internship or co-op or even volunteer work, can be really helpful to give you those experiences.
Absolutely. And I am a big believer in behavioral questions and even behavioral answers. So if you get asked a question and it is not a behavioral question, go ahead and tell it in a story because that will set you apart from the other candidates that are there. So that really leads us in, and Richard, we'll start off with this one on rookie mistakes. So we've all seen rookie mistakes. We've all probably made rookie mistakes ourselves. So what are some of the rookie mistakes that you see happen time and time again in your industry?
I think it's overall, and it's not just, so I'm in insurance, but I also own 28 residential doors with a business partner, mostly single family, some multifamily. And even in that, what I see the most issue with is people who don't know how to communicate effectively. And maybe it's a product of, I will consider Meredith and I we're elder millennials who grew up on AOL Instant Messenger, but some of it's texting. So I have a rule in my office: you can't text me if you're calling in sick. Like, you have to call me, because if you're sick enough to text me, you need to call and we're going to have that conversation. And that's a minor thing, but it bugs me. And so I think, but even when I find where I have situations, say with tenants, is they didn't communicate with me. Because if they would have said, hey, I can't pay my bill because of XYZ, or I can't pay my rent, there's an opportunity to work out a solution. But when it's 60 days later and they've ghosted you, there's not much that I'm willing to do or able to. And I think it's the same thing in the workplace. If somebody's in relationships too, this is one thing my wife and I talk a lot about. If you can't have clear, effective communication with your coworkers, your spouse, your customers, setting clear expectations, you will end up having issues. And so I think communication is one of the things that is a big rookie mistake, because sometimes communication can be vulnerable. Like, you have to show that maybe I don't understand something, or I'm not skilled at this. And nobody wants to be vulnerable, but to truly grow, you have to be. And so to me, 100%, where I screwed up was similar to what Randy was saying. I knew everything when I got out of college, probably when I first started my career. There's an interesting graph out there that you'll find with experts. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but it actually shows the more that you learn in a certain subject, the less confident you feel in it, because you understand how much you don't know. But the less you know about it, the higher your confidence rating can be. And so I've learned that I'm very skilled at some things, but there are many, many, many things that I'm not. And so I think being able to communicate that now and showing that vulnerability is a big deal.
Amber, I know you mentioned communication was a big thing that you guys looked for as well. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, what you see maybe rookies make in the role that you're in? Because we used to see a lot in that role, or the roles you placed them in.
So just to kind of piggyback off what Richard said, for me, it's the communication, but don't be afraid to speak up. I think so many of us, we get so excited about getting hired on somewhere that you almost kind of get walked over, because it's just, you're so eager to help and do whatever. And so people just kind of start dumping things on you. And if you don't ever speak up, it's just going to be a trend that continues. And I think also too, when you're having your reviews or annual reviews or quarterly or whatever they are, but having kind of honest conversations with your manager about what your expectations are, what you're looking for, what your goals are, because that person can help put you on that right path to complete your goals. But if you're not speaking up, they may think that you're 100% happy and just super satisfied with your role, but in reality, you're dying on the inside and you hate what you're doing. And so I think not being afraid to speak up, of course, in a polite but finesse type way, if you will, not going in and demanding something, but just having an open and honest conversation about your expectations and what you're looking for, I think goes a long way.
Well, and Randy, you gave us a story earlier about somebody who came in, they were really looking for some information from a senior engineer, and it was their presentation and their communication that just, met that challenge head on. And so taking that into consideration with the communication pieces that both Richard and Amber have shared, is there anything else that you would like to add to let maybe some of these future rookies go in so they don't make the same mistakes that we see happen over and over?
Yeah, I'll second or third that communication is so vitally important, particularly in an engineering environment. We have so many technical people that are brilliant, but they have trouble explaining and getting their concepts across. And it's particularly frustrating when they get in front of executives who have very limited time, and there's this thing in the military called bluff, bottom line up front. And it's an interesting way to kind of structure presentations to just let people know what you want. Another thing about communication is how you say things is important. I'll give a couple of examples for that. If you have aspirations to be a business unit president or whatever, and you walk into your boss's, your annual review or your mid-year review, and you ask, well, why am I not the business unit president yet? Why haven't you promoted me? That instantly puts a bad taste in your manager's mouth. And then another way to put it would be, what kind of skills are you looking, could I do? How can I grow myself to be in this position some way? And it totally frames the question differently. Another example of that, like, if you were going to work for a smaller business or whatever, and you were maybe worried about getting a raise because it's money out of the owner's pocket or whatever, you may not want to ask, well, how often do you give raises or something like that in an interview? But you can tell a lot by asking a question like, what are your plans for growth? It seems as a positive, but yet if they tell you they don't plan to grow, the chances of you getting a raise are probably, very slim. So communication is very important. But back to your original question about rookie mistakes, I think I see two. I see one in interviews a lot where people reveal really negative information unintentionally. Like you'll ask them about, a time when they faced a difficult situation, somebody who was difficult to work with, and they'll spend 5 minutes telling you about how unreasonable some professor was or something like that. And you just kind of tune them out after a while, and it reveals something negative about that. So you got to be careful and spinning stuff in a positive in an interview. When you actually get a job in the workplace, I think the biggest mistake a lot of new people make is assuming things don't change. I have somebody now who I'm their manager that they used to be my manager. Early in my career, there were some people that were kind of difficult to work with, and I just kind of blew them off. And I learned kind of the hard way that they have more influence than I thought they did, even though they may not be in my direct line of reporting. So I would just tell you to be prepared. Things change. Treat everybody with respect, because you never know when the tables are going to be turned.
And that is so true. I'm looking at the screen here, and I've worked with all three of you in multiple different capacities throughout my professional career. So I will say, don't ever burn a bridge, because you never know when you're going to come back around and work with other professionals. I know we've got some questions that are in the room, and so I want to go to Jenny and let Jenny ask us the first question.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to invite Kevin Pepper up. I know he has a question for our
Awesome.
panelists.
Hello, folks. How are y'all doing? Thank you so much for joining us today, Randy, Richard, and Amber. We appreciate y'all's time. First of all, I'm class of 1998, so go Rams. I appreciate y'all joining us today. I just have a senior in high school, and she's going to be going away to college here pretty soon. She's one of those kids, like a lot of kids her age, they do not know exactly what they want to do. But she's going to be science and math is kind of her area of is where her skill set is. But do you guys see employees that are coming in that have done internships or job shadowing, and how do you see that as being beneficial for a kid that doesn't exactly know what they want to do?
Randy, let's start with you on that one. Oh, go ahead, Amber.
Oh, no. I'll just say, just to kind of what Randy said when he was talking about internships, they help you so much, not really to know, is this something I truly want to do? But also, too, it shows that you have drive because you're doing other things other than just going to school and going to classes. So it shows that you have initiative, that you want to learn more. And so I think that's a huge proponent of internships or even unpaid or paid, whatever you can do, just because it gets your foot in the door. And that's how you make a lot of connections and kind of build your network so that when you do get the degree, you know what you want to do. You have different avenues of individuals that you can go down and say, hey, who do you know? This is what I'm looking to do. And sure enough, someone's going to point you in the right direction.
I think that one thing, I'll use my wife as an example because she is a 2009 graduate of ASU. And she's got a degree in kinesiology because she had planned on going to PT school. Most of her friends did. She had the grades too. She went and started her clinical hours while she was applying and did a bunch of home health physical therapy unpaid. Shadowed a physical therapist that we knew and decided that she hated it. And so I am thankful that she went down that path and tried to do her clinical hours that she needed for application because she learned that she had spent the last 4 years planning for something that she didn't love. And so for me, that changed the course of obviously what she was going to do. And now she's also a State Farm agent. And so you never know which road it's going to take. But she learned through doing internships that she did not want to do that, which is good because I would have rather have done that than after physical therapy school and 50 grand or 100 grand more in debt and those kind of things. So I think that it's important to kind of help figure out too, is this something I love? Because in life, I think if you don't love what you're doing and you don't have passion for it, you won't feel purpose, and it's not something you're going to love doing the rest of your life or for any amount of time.
Yeah, I think internships or some sort of volunteer work in your field or something are just absolutely essential these days. Most of our top candidates coming in that I'm seeing now have 2 or even 3 internships on their resumes. And so it's hard to compare that to somebody who's just had classwork and had no experience of any type because they learn so much. They learn how to work with other people. They learn the tools of the trade. Every university has their own way of teaching things, but none of them quite teach it the way it happens in the real world. And so the skills you pick up in a summer internship, if nothing else other than working with people in a team, academia is so centered around individual work, where the work world is so centered around teamwork. They're just so important these days. And if you can't get an internship, find a nonprofit that you can go show those skills at and volunteer for them.
Thank you, guys. And the part 2 of my question is, do any of you have any paid internships that my daughter could have? I'm just kidding. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you, Kevin, for that question. So Meredith, I'm going to let you kind of close it out with our three panelists. I want to just say thank you so much, Randy, Richard, and Amber, for being part of this inaugural RAM Talks event. We're looking forward to hopefully making this an annual opportunity to connect our alumni with students in meaningful ways, and being able to offer your perspective from the careers each of you have taken to students is so valuable, and I know your time is valuable, so thank you so much for that. Yeah, I know one of the things that was brought up are behavioral style questions. You can tune in tomorrow to RAM Talks to see some interview role playing with 3 students, and they will all be doing some behavioral type questions for that. So that'll be at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So Meredith, I'm going to hand it back to you for you to close out this fantastic panel discussion. Thank you again.
All right. Well, as we just come to a close, and really just the most cliche question, but I think one of the most important, you guys have given us so much information and our students so many tips and pieces of advice. I just want to leave it with, what is the one piece of practical advice that you would leave our students with today? As we all sit here, we've been in those seats before. Maybe we did it the right way. Maybe we didn't. I know I am a student that did not. But we also know people that are going into college, like Kevin Pepper's daughter. And Randy, I know you've got a son going in as well. So one piece of advice, practical advice, you would leave our students with today before we close out. And Randy, we'll start with you.
Just don't be afraid to take on new challenges. Without taking some risk, you're not going to find reward. As Amber said, find a mentor that you could discuss things with, to run those ideas by, but don't be afraid to step out there.
Amber, do you have anything you want to leave?
Yeah, so I would say, especially in my line of business, just you're talking with so many different individuals, and this is one of the biggest things that I find when I'm doing interviews is, and sometimes I even find this in my personal life, is you have to actively listen to people. I know, so especially during the interviews, you're trying to anticipate what the next question is going to be because you want to answer, you already have the answer in your head of what you know you want to say, but you could be completely mishearing the question or missing some key details that they're telling you about the role because you're already planning in your head question 2 and question 3. And so if you take the time to really just listen, not talk, take into what they're saying, it not only helps you professionally, but it also helps you personally as well, just because it makes you really hear what the other person's saying.
So much truth to that, Amber. Thank you. All right, Richard, what's the one piece you would leave everybody?
I think it's something that it takes us our 20s to learn. And so those of you that are getting right out of school and you're starting to go out into your own, and maybe the job market's not what you want it to be, or you can't figure out what you want to do necessarily because you got a degree and you decided you didn't want to go down that path, but you finished it. Find your passion. And when I talk about passion with people, I talk about what really gets you up in the morning. What makes you like Mondays? You know, you don't dread getting up on Monday. What makes your fire burn? Because when you find your passions, you can find purpose. And if you're passionate about something, you can figure out how to make money doing it. And I think that that's one thing that technology and the world that we're in has changed a lot in the past year. You can pretty much do anything you want online and make a living doing it. But if you don't go at it with enthusiasm and passion, it won't work. I wanted to go to medical school. I was in love with the idea. I was in love with the idea of it. I wasn't actually in love with it, because if I had been, I would have put in the work to get in. But we fall in love with what we think the world should look like, but we don't fall in love with the work that it takes to get there. So if you're not passionate about something, it's easy to quit, or it's easy not to put in your effort. And I don't want anybody who's graduating, in 2021 to look back in 20 years and go, I wish I had done it this way. I mean, I think a lot of people do. So I would tell you, go after and find your passion. It may not be traditional. It may not be what your family or friends want you to do or what they think is safe, but figure out what you're passionate about and figure out how to make an income off of that.
Well, awesome. I thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And if you are listening and you have questions for our panelists or you want to connect with them, get with us in the Career Development Office. We can help connect you to our panelists for any questions that you may have. Thank you, Randy, Richard, and Amber for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you all around campus.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so for those in the room, I would invite you to text everyone you know because they will want to hear our 4 o'clock presenter. It's Kevin Carroll. He's former Nike executive and just a very dynamic speaker. So whether they can be here in person or to tune in via YouTube, I would encourage you to let people know to tune in at 4 o'clock today. Thank you.
My check, 1, 2. My check, 1, 2. My check, 1, 2. Check, testing.
Test one, two. Test one, two.
Ram Talks 2021. I want to thank everybody that's logged in to partake in these talks today. I also want to just let everybody know that when we started this process of looking at alumni to be speakers for this event, there was no shortage of experienced, successful alumni that we had to choose from. And we're just excited about the lineups that we were able to put together. And our next speaker is no different than any of the rest, other than he's spectacular, and I want to introduce him now. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker and proud member of the Ram family, Mr. Kevin Carroll. Kevin is a globally recognized leader in advancing purpose plus community social innovation efforts for the public sector and private sector. Kevin has dedicated his life to advancing sport and play as vehicles for social change. He is an ongoing advisor and active supporter for many global social innovation organizations. Kevin was named by Success Magazine as one of the 19 seers changing the world. Kevin served in the United States Air Force for 10 years as a language interpreter and translator. He has worked at the professional, collegiate, and high school sports levels as an athletic trainer and sports performance coach. While at Nike, he was instrumental in helping the entire organization elevate team dynamics and creative collaboration. Since leaving Nike in 2004, he has helped turn creative ideas into reality for organizations such as Nike, Starbucks, Walt Disney, Adidas, the NBA, and many others. Kevin is the author of 4 highly successful books published by ESPN, Disney Press, McGraw-Hill, and a kid's book about. Kevin holds a MS in Health Education from St. Joseph's University, a BA in Speech Communication with a minor in Physical Education from Angelo State University, and an associate's degree in Interpreting and Translating from the Community College of the Air Force, and a specialization in Foundations of Positive Psychology via Coursera, the University of Pennsylvania. Please help me welcome Kevin Carroll.
Thanks, thank you very much. So I thought a lot about this conversation, and it's not an easy one for me to have because probably the most instrumental person in my journey in San Angelo is sitting in the front row there, Randall Gene Matthews. And he and I have a relationship that dates all the way back to 1986. And I'm going to blow your mind right now, Randall Gene. I still have this from when we met. And I'm going to talk about that conversation and how that actually was very catalytic for me. But the most important thing that I want to share with you all is the fact that I chose Angelo State because of the community. And the community was so important, and I felt like I belonged. And there are people from that initial meeting in 1986 that I still consider dear friends, and we still communicate on the regular. And I just think that that really is indicative of that community, that campus, that university. And any of the students that are enrolled there right now, I'm here to tell you that Rams are about GSD, getting stuff done. That's what we do. That's all we know how to do. And so you're joining an amazing community that's about that action. And so I'm going to share with you a bit of my story, and then I'm going to really kind of dive into my time at Angelo State, and then what that catalyzed afterwards. I'm going to share a lot of eye candy, some show and tell. That's the easiest way for me to do this. And so there'll be no slides. There'll be a lot of things that I'll hold up. I'll send you all a little creative resource after this conversation. And so that'll be something that you can reference back to after this conversation. But what I ask all of you is just to be as present as possible. And as my grandfather would say, be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. And then I promise you I will wring myself out during this next conversation of 50 minutes. So if that's fair, can I get a thumbs up? Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to start the conversation off with a short narrative that sets up my childhood. They chose their addiction over raising 3 sons. The pinnacle moment of a parent's neglect resulted in the 3 of us being rescued by a stranger, shuttled down to a Greyhound bus station in Bowling Green, Virginia, and placed on a bus alone. My older brother was 8, I was 6, my little brother was 3, and we were sent 200 plus miles back to Philadelphia to my grandparents' house, a one-way fare. Without parents in my life, I resorted to finding my life lessons from many sources. Businessmen and laborers, winos and alcoholics, drug dealers and users, sport coaches, my peers, old heads at the playground, merchants, war vets, school teachers, custodians, librarians, food service workers, and other kids' moms and dads. I learned to be constantly on the lookout for any nugget of insight or wisdom that would assist me on my quest to rise above my suffering and circumstances. Turning ideas into reality became my focus, and I'll show you became my daily mantra. I spent endless hours at the neighborhood playground, school, and the public library. Those were my safe places, my sanctuaries. Finding a way to rise above my circumstances and not let my circumstances dictate my destiny was my constant motivation. So one of the things that I want everyone to pay attention to is we're all dealing with some difficult right now. It's been challenging. 2020 has not been easy at all, but I'm here to tell you this. If you are here right now and I'm seeing you and you're on this WebEx, you have been through a crucible and you're built for it. You got grit and you got resilience. And I know this to be true because I had to have grit and resilience as a child. My father left when I was 3. I wouldn't see my dad again. My mom left us in that predicament when I was 6, and my grandparents took us in. And I had to find a way to fend for myself. I had to find a way to navigate all this ambiguity and uncertainty and challenges. It's no different than what we're dealing with from 2020 and right now currently. Lots of ambiguity, lots of upheaval, lots of uncertainty. But guess what? You're in a position because you have a community. And I found my community at the first place that I actually felt safe, and that was the playground. And so I always have a ball as a representative of the playground. Preston Playground was the first place that I felt safe as a child, was the first place that I was welcomed. And sports became this catalyst for me. I played sports never for trophies, first place, or medals. It was never for any of that. It was always for belonging. I was always seeking out ways to belong. And the reason I was doing that is because I didn't have a traditional family. So the more that I started to find these places, and that playground was the first place, I really paid attention to where I was welcomed. And so one of the things that I realized really quickly was that I had a really high athletic IQ. I could play games. I was fast. I was diminutive. I didn't use the word small. If you dare to call me small, I learned that word diminutive in 3rd grade. I'd come back at you. Like, don't you dare call me small. I am diminutive. Yes, my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Rock, actually taught me that word. Cacophony was the other great word she taught me in 3rd grade. She was the first teacher that introduced me to a thesaurus. Blew my mind. I'd never seen a book filled with words. So I loved words from that point. But the playground was the first place, and I played all those sports, always for belonging, always for connecting, always for being a part of a team. I loved being on teams. And then I got my public library card. And the first book that I took out of the library was this title, Where the Wild Things Are. Now, I always say to everyone has a recollection of this book. Everyone. And I love the fact that this was written back in the 60s, which is the year that I was growing up. Yes, I always tell people I'm well preserved. I'm the Black Benjamin Button, I've said from time to time, right? So, right, the engine might look good, but the chassis is definitely rusty. That's a West Texas by God saying. I got that from back in the day. So one of the things that I know is that I look nothing like my brothers. So I'm 62 years young. And I know this to be true. Your inside is reflected on your outside. My brothers are giants. I'm the runt of the litter. Both my brothers are over 6 feet tall, over 220 plus pounds. They have full beards, chest and back hair, and I still barely shave at 62. I don't know why. I got a whole different set of genes from my brothers. But I did understand this really quickly, that I loved reading books, and this book set off my academic journey. Discovering this in the late 1960s changed everything for me academically. My teachers paid attention to the fact that I was a really great reader, and they poured into me as much as they could. Now, you need to understand that we were the kids that went on the early bus. We went to school to get breakfast and we had free lunch. We were the kids who were food challenged. So our school and the administrators and teachers knew our story to a degree. They knew that we weren't getting regular meals. So they actually sat down with you at lunch. It was the most amazing thing to be a part of this community and how the administrators and the teachers cared for us. So I had the ball, I had books, and then probably one of the most important moments happened in my life, but it all happened from a fight. So a new kid moved into the neighborhood. We're all like 9 or 10 years old. His name is Norman Lane. He innocently walks up to the playground and we're playing, the group of boys, and they look him up and down. They say, okay, well, we need to see if you're tough. You're going to fight little Carroll over here. I'm like, why am I going to fight this kid? I don't even know him. I'm not angry at him. They said, well, if you two don't fight, we're going to beat you both up. I'm like, that's not fair. So I'm negotiating with this group of boys that I know really well. And Norman Lane is standing off to the side, and he keeps saying the same thing. It's okay, we can fight. It's okay, we can fight. It's okay. And I get so angry, I just turn and I leap on him, and we start tussling and scuffling in the dirt, right? But we don't throw any punches or anything. And everyone walks away, really kind of disappointed that it wasn't some amazing pugilistic moment. And Norman looked at me, and we're both covered in dirt, and he says, you want to come to my house for peanut butter and jelly? That was his peace offering. And it changed my whole journey as it related to family, because I met his family. I met his mom. And Miss Lane became what I affectionately call my CEO, my chief encouragement officer of my dreams. Miss Lane gave me permission to dream big with 2 words: why not? I'd come over to their house. It was directly across the street from my grandparents' house. And I'd go over there and I'd tell Miss Lane all these different ideas I had and things I wanted to do. And she would always say the same thing: why not? But then she'd always follow up with, don't talk about it, be about it. There's lots of talkers and very few doers, Kevin. Which one are you? I learned that action was the secret ingredient to turning ideas, hopes, and dreams into reality. Miss Lane was that human catalyst for me. Miss Lane was that CEO, my chief encouragement officer. So you put those 3 things together: the ball and the playground and sports, books and my love of learning, and betterment, Miss Lane and that whole community of people pouring into me, and I found a way to rise above my suffering and circumstances. Now, all 3 of us did fine. My older brother Donnie's retired Navy. My younger brother Kyle's is an IT specialist. But my journey is very different than my brother's. Because of a ball, books, and betterment, I got a bachelor's degree in speech communication and sports medicine from Angelo State University. I got a master's degree from St. Joe's University. I spent 10 years in the Air Force as a language translator, where I learned 5 languages. I speak Serbian, Croatian, Russian, German, and Czech. Now, guess what? I dropped Spanish after 5 minutes in high school, so I was a little hard-headed back in the day, but I still remember that first 5 minutes of class. ¿Es Susana en casa? No en la cocina. ¿Dónde está en la sala? No en la cocina. And I walked out of class. I would have had Spanish in my repertoire also, but I was a little bit of a knucklehead. But this takes us to 1986 and me arriving at Goodfellow Air Force Base as a language instructor. And it was on a fateful afternoon after calling Randall G. Matthews in the athletic training room at the field house and explaining to him that I wanted to be a student athletic trainer there and go through the athletic training program, the internship program. And he invited me to come by. I did not know that the Houston Oilers were actually doing training camp. I pull up in my car, walk into the field house. I'm in my dress blues, and I'll never forget, Randy looked me up and down, right? And he said, he saw I was squared away, right? That I looked good in my blues. And he said, so what's going on? And I started explaining what I wanted to do. And I remember him saying, well, you have a job. Why would you want to do this? Do you realize all it's going to take? And I remember saying to Randy, don't you worry about that. I'll take care of that. This is what I want to do. And Randy famously said, well, I'm not going to tell you no. And he always says this. He said, my claim to fame is, now he says this, my claim to fame is I didn't mess you up, right? So Randy got out of the way and let me go after what I wanted. But what happened magically was the community of Angelo State rallied around me and my family. My boys became, daily kind of ornery kids in the field house every day because I picked them up from Glenmore Elementary School because we live right on Glenmore Drive. 315 Glenmore Drive, still remember the address, right by the base. And the boys would come over, and if I couldn't make it there, one of the other student athletic trainers would go and grab them. It was usually Janice Marie Corbett at the time, right? She would actually go and pick my boys up. My boys were taken care of like they were family. I was welcome there, and what I thought was really magical were all the professors, all the instructors, all the individuals started to understand what I was endeavoring to do, and they knew I had a full-time job at the base. Folks rallied around me and supported me in a way that there's no way I would have ever been able to complete all the things that I did in the time that I did. I ended up getting my Texas licensure in athletic training, got my national licensure in athletic training, and then my very first job was for the community hospital, San Angelo Community Hospital, right? And I went to Cristobal High School, 6-man football. And at the time, Randy, you'll remember this, I got Pierce Holt's old car, the Holtmobile, and I was driving Pierce Holt, a famous alum from Angelo State who played in the NFL, won 2 Super Bowls in his first 3 years with the San Francisco 49ers. When he signed his contract, he had an old car, and I ended up buying it. So I was driving that to and from Cristobal High School, working as an athletic trainer for the hospital, right, as an outreach program. And one thing that was really crazy is that I was learning this community in Cristobal. I was learning so much about these kids and their families and everything because it was such a tight-knit community. I would come back and tell these stories to Randy, and Randy would say, well, maybe this is really what you're going to end up doing. He says, but I kind of feeling there's some other things in store for you. I'm like, no, Randy, I'm going to get a high school job. I'm going to be great. I'm going to stay there. It's going to be the way it's going to be. Randy said, okay, well, we'll see. So I get out of the military in 1990. Randy and I stay very close. Angelo State never is too far away from me. And one of the things that I always say, and this is one of the things that's really interesting about me, is I keep artifacts. And so this is my diploma, class of 1989. Remember that because it's going to come in really a special moment when I tell you something. Randy, I'm fixing to blow your mind right now. So I've kept some of the programs from different events and moments when I was there. So this is when we were in the football playoffs. Oh, this is when we hosted the track and field championships. This is another when we were in football playoffs. And this is when I was doing Armed Forces sports for the Air Force. And I keep all of these things around because they're great memories, but even more so, they remind me of my journey and the people who are a part of my journey. So I leave San Angelo, Texas. I move back to Philadelphia because I'm going to get custody of my 2 boys. I end up being a single father for over 15 years, raising my 2 sons. I move back to Philadelphia because that's where they're at, and I get a high school athletic trainer job. I contact Randy about it, and I tell him this opportunity that I have at this private school, and I think this is going to be amazing because my boys are going to be able to go to this private school. And Randy says, that's so good. I'm so excited for you. And I'm calling him, and we're more like siblings than he is like my dad or my uncle or something. We're more like siblings. And I would talk to Randy about just challenges, things I was facing, questions that I might have, how should I set up things? And he was so generous with his time. And all the while, he's still running the athletic training program at Angelo State. So I'm at the high school level at Haverford School, high school level at the Episcopal Academy. Then I get the head athletic trainer job at St. Joseph's University in only 2 years. Now I'm running a program with 600 student athletes. Randy and I are talking quite often. Randy helps me navigate a challenge that I'm facing because I had to get a state licensure for Pennsylvania. And I don't know if you remember this, Randy, but you told me some famous words. You said, well, you don't have to worry. The 2 most important modalities you will ever have at your disposal are your hands. And all you need to do is work your hands until you get your license. And so that's what I did. And as I did that, one famous person that I got to spend some time with was Otho Davis, who is from Texas. And Otho Davis used to run the Philadelphia Eagles athletic training department. Randy actually introduced me to Otho when he came to visit the Oilers training camp, right? When way back in the day. And so I ended up doing some internships summertime with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm at the St. Joe's University, and that's where the Sixers practice. So now I'm helping the Philadelphia 76ers during the day when my student athletes are actually in class. Little did I know that I was actually going to end up getting an opportunity to work for the Sixers full time. In only 5 years, and with the help of Randy and others, I end up becoming only the third African-American head athletic trainer in the history of the NBA for my hometown team, the Philadelphia 76ers, in 1995. At that point, I'll never forget when I was getting that job and I was learning all the different things. The first thing I said to Randy is, I'm going to send all the old equipment that they have there. I'm going to order new equipment. I'm going to send it to you. I want to gift that to you. And I think one of the things that I've always tried to do was to show my gratitude to Angelo State and to the community there that supported me. I've always tried to find a way to let you all know how important you have been and will remain in my life. And so I've never allowed this relationship to ever dwindle in any way. In fact, the first person's ankle I ever taped in 1986, Patrick P.D. Hunt and I, and Randy knows that name very well. He played linebacker there. We are still friends to this day. He claims that he didn't ruin my journey because PD says that my first tape job was so bad that he said, I'm going to come back tomorrow and you better get better, right? So he says that he really actually saved my career. But we continue to be great friends. He's actually an executive at PepsiCo now, and we stay good friends. We talk on the regular. And one of the things that I want to implore you to understand, especially all the students listening in, is this community, belonging. It's not a coincidence. It's a special thing that happens there at Angelo State. So now it's 1995. I'll be with the 76ers for 2 seasons. I'm there with Allen Iverson, Jerry Stackhouse, a host of other people, but my languages actually end up coming in handy. So we're playing against the Charlotte Hornets. On that team is a player from the former Yugoslavia, which is one of the languages I speak, Serbian. His name is Vlade Divac. If you're an NBA fan, you'll know that name. If not, Vlade Divac is 7 feet tall, from the former Yugoslavia, played in the NBA for a long time, was an executive in the NBA also. On this night, he's in the zone talking trash every time he runs by our bench about how bad we are and how he's going to beat us by himself. And so I'm sitting on the bench innocently, and my coach, I don't know why, he remembers that I speak Vlade's language, Serbian. So in the middle of an NBA basketball game, my coach turns to me and says, Carroll, why don't you start saying something to that guy every time he runs by our bench to distract him so I can come up with a better defense and not use our timeouts? I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, well, that big guy that runs by, just say something about his mom or dad or sister every time it runs by. Just insult him really quickly in that language. I'm like, Coach, I'm not doing that. That man is 7 feet tall. He goes, no. He'll never expect it from you. Help the team out, Carroll. Fine, Coach, I surrender. Now, mind you, I had 2 weeks of obscenities training in the military. I can tell your mama jokes in Serbian to crush your soul. I started insulting this 7 foot tall man in the middle of an NBA basketball game. Your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother. By the 5th time I've insulted his family lineage, Vlade Divac starts walking towards our bench. The game is still going on, and he's asking, who is insulting my family in Serbian? And the coach turns and points at me, and he looks at me like, there's no way. And I go, Dobar dan, kako si, gospodine? He's like, what? The whole rest of the game, he can't make a shot, can't do anything right. My coach is high-fiving me. Great job, Carroll. The game ends, and Vlade comes into our locker room looking for me. Where's that little guy at? And he finds me, and I'm bracing for the worst possible thing that might happen, and the unexpected happens. Vlade invites me to join the Yugoslavian national basketball team for the 96 Olympic Games in Atlanta. I'm their sports medicine liaison and translator. And the NBA thought it was such an amazing story. This black guy from Philadelphia speaking fluent Serbian. They did a special feature about me on NBA Inside Stuff. For you young ones, you might not know that show. Google it. You can find it, right? And that feature someone at Nike saw it. And I got a phone call out of the blue from Nike. They wanted to hire me away from the 76ers and create a position for me. And they said, would you be willing to take a risk? Now, I'll remind you, at this point, I'm a single father traveling with the NBA quite a bit for road trips. I have 2 sitters that I juggle to watch my boys. Every time I come home, it seems like there's a new trophy, a new A in the refrigerator, and I'm not present. I don't like the idea of me repeating history and being an absent dad. So I sit my boys down. We have this conversation about this opportunity to move to Portland, Oregon. I explain to my boys, I got this whole script prepared, and I'm explaining what I think is the best options for us. And my oldest son, I'll never forget, he stops me in the middle of the conversation and says, Dad, I have one question. I'm like, okay. He goes, will we get free gear from Nike? I'm like, yeah, I think so. He goes, let's go. And so that was the deal maker. And I left the 76ers. I moved out to Portland, Oregon with my boys. And I've been out here since 1997. I ended up working for Nike for 7 years. I got to create my own title. My official title at Nike was Creative Catalyst, Catalyst with a K because of Kevin. And if you remember from science, a catalyst is a spark, an excitatory agent that speeds up or changes a process. It helps others turn ideas into reality or other things move forward to advance. So that's what I did at Nike. I was that spark. I was that change agent. I was that convener of people. I helped affect the culture, but also projects and ideas. I worked all over the company in different areas, from product design to marketing to communications. But one of the things that I really was excited to do was I had a regular meeting with Phil Knight, the CEO and chairman at the time of Nike, because he said I was the mayor of Nike. He said, Kevin, you're the mayor here. I might be CEO and chairman, but you're like the mayor here. So you're going to let me know how things are going. So we had a monthly meeting, and I would check in with him and let him know how the company was doing, how people were feeling. Now, I'd had an opportunity to do lots of presentations all over the campus, globally for Nike. I even got 3,000 people to play tag at Nike for 3 hours. That was one of my beautiful bedlam moments, because people were not, I thought they weren't being more inspirational, more creative, more clever. And so I actually said to them they needed to find more time for fun. And there was a recent article in Inc. magazine about Steve Jobs. And the only time he would turn his phone off was actually when he was going to play in the innovation lab. His assistant always knew that if his phone was off, he was actually in his playtime, as he called it. And so I think if it's good enough for Steve Jobs to find time for fun and find time for play, we all should be tapping into that, because play is serious business. Play can save a life like it did for me, but play is also at the root of innovation, creativity, problem solving, abstract thinking, ingenuity, innovation. And what is the one thing that we're being asked of, even more so now coming out of 2020? To be more innovative, to be a better problem solver, to find a way to navigate some difficulty. You learn all that in play. I know this to be true, that if you have a group of people who convene and come together for the sake of fun, but also purposeful play, to be more innovative, more creative, a better problem solver, you can find a way to do that. But it's going to take collective energy, collective resources, a collective intention. And that's what I learned when I was at Angelo State, that I would not have had the success that I've had to date if it wasn't for that community, the collective energy that rallied around me to assist me to turn my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations into reality. So I was spending 7 years at Nike. I had this opportunity now because I've written a book. My very first book, I had to actually self-publish it. Rules of the Red Rubber Ball was rejected by every publishing company because they said it was over-designed and too creative. Can you imagine? That's literally what they said to me. Dumb down the idea we might consider publishing your book. I said no. I literally decided to self-publish it. It took off. Someone from ESPN discovered my book. They signed me to a 3-book deal. So I'm still at Nike while this is happening. Then I get a speakers bureau representing me, and Nike lets me use my own personal time to do speeches around the country. And then I get this opportunity to be represented by a talent agency, creative artist agency. All this while I'm still at Nike. So now I have a dilemma. I really love it there, but I've got these opportunities to maybe have more reach and impact. So during one of my meetings with Phil Knight, I explain to him what's going on, and I talk about how conflicted I am about the situation. I'll never forget how clear he was with me. He looked me dead in my eye and he said, look, I don't let talent leave here. You'll be the third person I tell they should go. We'd be selfish to keep you here. You've got bigger work to do. And so with that blessing, I left Nike in 2004, and I've been on my own for 17 years now as an author, a speaker, and an instigator of inspiration, and a proud member of the Angelo State community. Ram fam, proud member. You all need to understand that I know that if I don't show up in 1986 and have that conversation with Randy and have the courage to say these things to him, but for him to have the willingness to give me permission to chase it and get out of the way, as he said, and then to get all these other people to see that I'm about that action, right? I'm about that GSD, getting stuff done, and they start rallying around me. Maybe I'm not at this point now in my journey, but all those things came into bear and really to actually catalyze my life. But I'll take you all the way back to my childhood. I've always found a way to rise above suffering and circumstances. I've always had to find a way to not allow my circumstances to dictate my destiny. I've always had grit, but I've also had grace, and I've had a lot of gratitude. And so now that I've been around the world and doing the work that I've been doing for the last 17 years, and when I got the opportunity to actually spend some time with you all, first it was I chose Angelo State. I actually shared some things with that and was talking about some of the really remarkable moments that I had. One of the proudest moments I had, and I've been back to the community to do several different events. And you should know that Randy is always on my rider, right? He's my private driver, right? So he's always in my contract. So that's one of the ways I make sure we always get to spend time. I'm proud to say that I actually got a chance to be the commencement speaker in 2012. And I had some custom Chuck Taylors made with my grad class in the back. So it helps to have some friends in the footwear business. So that was one of the things that I'm really proud of. And, I think that, Randy, you would love to know that I still have my first anatomy book and my first athletic training book. So I still have those because these are all reminders of the journey and how special my time was in San Angelo. And so as I started to think about what I wanted to leave the students with, especially, right, this next generation of Rams that are working their way through their journey, I wanted to give you some simple truths, some simple lessons, some things that I know to be true. So you need to have something that gets you up in the morning. What's your red rubber ball? What are you chasing? And I think it's really important that you think about that because you need to have something that inspires you to get out of bed in the morning, but you need to know why. What's your red rubber ball? What are you chasing? What inspires you? Once you know that, you need to show up with curiosity every single day. So one of the things that I know to be true is to stay curious. The more curious you are, the better. And curiosity allows you to find ways to do many, many things. So we've been facing a lot of challenges since last year, since the pandemic. And one of the things that I started to understand really quickly is that I made a decision to tap into positivity and optimism. So here's a simple truth. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So I decided to double down on optimism and positivity during these challenging times. And as everyone was going through the grieving process, because everyone did, everyone lost something, right? Think about that. Think about the grief process. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Did you all know that there's a 6th stage to the grieving process now that's been approved by the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation? One of her proteges, David Kessler, actually did research on the fact that there should be something beyond acceptance. Tragically, he lost his son, and he realized that he just didn't want to stay in acceptance. And so he started doing research on what do people do with the loss. And the 6th stage now in the grief process is finding meaning. Finding meaning. Now think about that. If we all endeavor to find meaning around this pause, this pandemic, this moment where everyone, the entire globe, lost something, and we find a way to actually find meaning in this, right, and purpose in this, to go beyond this, can you imagine collectively what we can do? So I'm challenging everyone there within the Ram Fam, Angelo State community, especially the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers who are at the university now taking classes, to raise your game. Find meaning and purpose in this moment, and use all of the tools and resources and classes and professors and education available there so that you can really be the game changers that we know you can be. Because I know that's such an opportunity. And one of the things that you're going to need is energy. And the way that I think you do that is by being more present. I said it at the very beginning of my conversation. Be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. Keep showing up, right? Keep trusting and believing that hard work never goes unrewarded, right? So if you bring that intention every morning, my grandfather would say, pay attention to your intention. Pay attention to your intention. You know what inspires you. You know what gets you out of bed. You know why. You bring that curiosity on the regular every single day. I love this quote by Albert Einstein. I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. I truly believe that's me, and I'm embodied that way, but I've also been encouraged to keep staying that way. Right, going through the athletic training internship program was all about curiosity, right? Because one of the things that I love that Randy did is he didn't hover over you. He let you own your journey. He challenged you to find your own way. I think that's what's really beautiful about Angelo State is that no one's just going to hold your hand, right, and rub your back and tell you it's all going to be okay. It's supportive plus demanding environment. It is a supportive plus demanding environment. Yes, they're there with tools and resources available for you, but they're going to demand of you your best. And if you raise your game and you keep showing up, and people will take notice and they'll rally around you. And that's one of the things that I realized was really important is I needed to be about that action and demonstrate to people that I was about something, and they rallied around me in a supportive plus demanding way. So the more that you start to recognize the importance of that, you got to always bring some fight. Nothing's going to come easy. You got to have some mental toughness. So what's that grit for you? How are you going to be resilient? It's being tested right now. I know some of you have felt like this is so challenging. This is overwhelming. I can't deal. But you're built for this. You're only given what you can handle. And you have this community here to support you. So the more that you lean into all the tools and resources, like this whole wonderful RAM talks and all these things, this is a wonderful opportunity to take full advantage of all the things they're offering you. So what's that grit? What's that fight? How are you having sustained determination to keep showing up every day? I'll remind you again, I love this book, Wonderland by Stephen Johnson. Find time for some fun. There's a great quote in this book. Right, I love this. You'll find the future wherever people are having the most fun. You'll find the future wherever people are having the most fun. You want to talk about a place that is filled with great opportunities for joy and to enjoy things? It's where you're at. And I have watched the city of San Angelo and that greater area grow in ways I never thought possible. So there's many opportunities for you to find enjoyment, all the campus activities. As everything starts ramping back up, you're going to have all of that at your disposal. And the more that you recognize that, I think this is mandatory reading for all dreamers, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, because this talks about your personal legend. You need to start thinking about how are you going to make an impact? What's going to be your legacy? You start forming that when you're there at school. You start thinking about the things that you want to affect, you want to impact. What do you want to leave behind? How are you going to leave it better than what you got? And I think the more that you recognize that, I want to bring up one really important thing. The Alchemist talks about magic. Randall G knows this. I keeps me some magic nearby. So this bottle says, uncork the possibilities. I'm here to remind you of something that happens there at Angelo State. You get an opportunity to uncork your magic all the time. Now, I will say this, if you were grade schoolers, and I actually brought this out because I have done this over virtual, right on a Zoom, they lose their dang mind. Like they go crazy when they see a bottle of magic. They start screaming at the screen, pour some on me, pour some on me. I have literally uncorked the bottle and tossed it towards the screen, and the kids are leaping and jumping and grabbing it. And one child actually grabbed it out of the air, sniffed it, and said, "It smells like magic." I love the fact that they can suspend belief and imagine something that's not easy to see yet. That's what you're being challenged to do when you're there in school at Angelo State. It might not be clear right away what the future holds for you, but you just got to hang in there. You got to trust and believe that you can uncork the possibilities. And I just keep asking you, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. And if you're willing to keep fighting the good fight, I promise you that it's going to turn out in a way you never thought possible. That you're going to find a way to be the game changers that we know you can be. We know that you have the potential because you chose Angelo State. Angelo State's going to help you, but it is not going to just hand it to you. You're going to earn it. So you got to have that game. You got to have that fight. You got to have that mental toughness. So have something that gets you out of bed in the morning and know why. Keep showing up. Be present. Be where your feet are. Bring that curiosity, that spirit of curiosity all the time. Your energy, your energy, your energy. You got to take good care of yourself. Rest and recovery are so critical to chasing your dreams, your hopes, your ambitions. How are you taking and refueling yourself? Take good care of you. Make sure that you're getting the good rest and recovery, especially when you're dealing with more difficult in this time. The more that you start to recognize the importance of that, make sure you find time for fun. Bring a bit of that mental toughness, right? That grit, resilience. Always know that you're not alone. You've got a community that is surrounding you and supporting you. And I'll say this, I'll say it over and over again. If your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. It should be audacious. It should make you sit up in the middle of the night wondering, did I do enough to advance my hope, my dream, my aspiration? Every evening I do this one activity. I started doing this during the pandemic. Last year I started writing down before I go to sleep, what went well, 3 things and why. There's actually research around the fact that if you put good thoughts on your brain before you go to sleep, you'll have better sleep. If you bring all that worry and that concern and that anxiety, you'll have fitful sleep. And you won't recover well to fight the good fight the next day. So doing that what went well journal has really assisted me in a big way. But I also know this, that if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. And there are 5 ingredients to turn a hope, a dream, and aspiration into reality. DREAM. The D is for dedication. Don't talk about it, be about it. The R is for responsibility. Have someone be supportive and demanding in your life. Find someone who is your accountability buddy. Find that person who's your Randall Jean Matthews, right? That person who believes in you. That Miss Lane, right? Who's that encourager. But you need to do that because you can't do it alone. Find that collective group of people that want to rally around you, but also lovingly shove you towards your destiny and hold you accountable. The E is education. Lifelong learners wanted, needed, and necessary. I want to challenge everyone to keep that beginner's mindset. The beginner's mindset is an openness and eagerness to learn something new every single day. You've got an opportunity to learn something new every single day when you see the light of day. My grandfather would say, it's better to be seen than viewed. So that's a good start to your day, right? Hashtag facts on that, right? If you above it and not below it, that's a good start. Now, what are you going to do with the day? Your attitude, you get what you give. You bring some stank energy, guess what's coming your way? You bring some good energy, guess what's coming your way? And you got to stay motivated. No dream is microwavable. It's not going to happen overnight. You got to trust and believe that hard work never goes unrewarded. So dream big, and you're in the place that will allow you to do that. So stretch, challenge yourself, be audacious with that idea of what you want to do. And so I want to say this, And then I think that we're going to do a little bit of Q&A potentially. I believe we are going to do that. If I'm not right, I got other stuff I can talk about anyway, and no problem. So, belonging, belonging, belonging. Angelo State is about belonging. I know that optimism has always been a really important thing for me, and I've tapped into optimism, and I want you all to remain optimistic. I'll say it again. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Do you see an obstacle or do you see an opportunity? That's your choice. I'm going to always be grateful for everything that's happened to me because of the Ram fam. I'm going to bring gratitude every single day. Because one of the things I know to be true, and I say this with all sincerity, that Randall G. Matthews, I know that it's not always an opportunity where someone can let somebody smell the roses, smell their flowers. I'm going to tell you this now that I know you have been such an important person in my life. And I'm doing everything not to be emotional about this, but I know that all the success that I am enjoying now all dates back to that summer of 1986, where I had this singular idea that of what I wanted to do, and I have a conversation with you, but what if I don't meet you? What if you're not there? What if you're not in the right mindset? What if you're not ready to hear somebody like me? Your openness and willingness to hear me out, and then to be that person who basically says, well, I'm not going to tell you no, but you also held me accountable. You were supportive plus demanding. Randy, I can never thank you enough, and all the community of Angelo State. I just can't. And that's why I'm always so quick to want to do whatever I can. So this is never a bother. And I'm offering myself to anyone who's out there right now. If you need an encourager, a CEO, you need somebody to be supportive plus demanding, reach out. As my nana would say, speak up. A closed mouth don't get fed. So speak up, right? I'm here for you. I want to help all of you because I know that I just want to carry on the legacy of what Randy did for me. And so I'm still connected. You know, Randy, you'll love this, that Jenny and I talk regularly, and I've actually been helping her with her daughter. That all goes back to the fact that I've said to Jenny, you did for my boys, I want to do for yours. I'll say it over and over, and we'll never get tired of saying it, is that, you know, the Ram fam means everything to me. And I just thank all of you for your time. But even more so, I just want to challenge all of you. I believe this to be true. My actions may seem small, but their collective impact will be great. Our actions may seem small, but collectively, if we do our part, our impact will be great. So do your part. Y'all good? Can you do that for me? Can I count on you? Can I get a thumbs up? Can I get a what? Can I get a something? That's what's up. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Kevin, thank you so much. My name is Jenny Love. I'm the Director of Development and Alumni Relations here, and I didn't realize we had so much in common. I grew up here in San Angelo, and when the Oilers were here, I never missed it. My sweet grandmother actually worked at Angelo State back in the day, and so the 80s, we never missed football, basketball. We were at everything. My grandmother was Margaret Buck, Miss Buck. She was the.
Oh no!
Yes. But something at my sister is the principal at Glenmore Elementary now. My sister, who's also an ASU alum, and then I live in Christoval, and my boys go to Christoval.
Oh,
so
come on! So that we could just end it now, Jenny. That's a wrap. Let's just wrap it. Let's end that up now. That was it, right?
Well,
just drop that mic on that.
We can't end it now because I know that we've got some folks who have questions in the room, and so I want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to do that and ask questions that they have. So I want to invite anyone who has a question to come on up and ask. All right, Kristen.
Hi, hello, good evening.
Hi.
Yeah, it's almost evening. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that was one of the most impactful speeches that I've heard at Angelo State University. I'm a junior this year, but I took a lot of notes. I don't know if you can see. I wrote a lot
brilliant.
of things that
That's
you're
good.
saying.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, no. I serve as the president of the student body for Student Government Association, and I would love to have you come talk to SGA in the future, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming to participate in this, because that was really impactful. But I have a meeting at 5, so I have to leave. But thank you again
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you, Kristen.
That just meant a lot
Absolutely.
to me. Yeah.
So reach out, okay?
Okay. Yes, sir. I will.
Take good care.
I do have a question, because I think oftentimes as leaders we might have groups. You talk about play and motivation and just the importance of play. But what would you tell a leader who have team members that just are not into that at all? How do you motivate those team members, whether it's us working here on campus or our students that are a part of student organizations? How can we encourage others that might not be in their wheelhouse to encourage them to do that play?
So I think it's really important, Jenny, to find what motivates each person. I think it's really critical to know your team really well, because everyone's going to be motivated differently and uniquely. And I think we start off with just each person's story. How do you get to know your teammates better, their stories better? And then you start to understand what motivates each of them. So my motivation might be, I love my job. Someone else's motivation might be the sake of their family. For someone else, it might be something else. I need to know what your reason, what's your why behind this role. And if it's not just that I know that, I need to dive a little deeper, but we also need to know that about each other. And as a leader, you have to set the vision and you have to get people to rally around that. And I think too many times leaders hide behind their titles and never let themselves be vulnerable enough to be seen as a whole person. Therefore, your team doesn't want to rally around you. They don't want to be vulnerable in front of you. They just want to be transactional with you. But aren't we trying to be transformational as leaders? That's the goal, is to move from being transactional to being transformational. And so I think the more that as a leader, you show up more transparent, more vulnerable, willing to share your story beyond your title and your role and your job description, they're rallying around you as the person. They want to support you as the person. They want to win together because they know each other beyond their titles and roles and job descriptions. So I think it always goes back to storytelling. And I think we can always harken back to childlike things that are really powerful. They're simple, but they're powerful. And we all have a play history. We all do. Play helped to shape us in some way. And so if we can actually start to tap back into that, but have play with purpose in these moments where people are understanding why we're playing, what it's helping us to accomplish for our goals, what we're trying to get after, they're clear on the vision of the team, I think you can get people to rally. But I think a lot of leaders have to have that willingness to be vulnerable and be willing to tell their story. Yes, we have to redact a little bit, right? It's with our kids, right? We don't tell our kids all the crazy stuff we did when we were their age, but we got to tell them something so they know we're just not this perfect being. Because one of the worst things for kids to discover is that their parents aren't perfect, right? They find that out later and they're like, wait, I thought you were like, no, the more they know that you have failed, that you have found a way to rise above something, that you have dealt with difficult. It's the same thing with leaders. You didn't just wake up and get that title. You've gone through some things. You've dealt with loss. You've dealt with challenges. You've found a way to navigate difficult things. I think that's really important. So leaders need to be more vulnerable, more transparent, and then I think they can have a fighting chance with their team.
Thank you so much for that, Kevin. And you talked about being transformational. Your talk today, I think, has been super transformational. So I would just want to thank you so much for your time, for spending time with us today. For those that are here in the C.J. Davidson of the Houston Hart University Center, and those who are watching now and will have the opportunity to watch a recorded version later. Thank you so much, Kevin. And just on behalf of Angelo. Come on, you want to ask a question? You come on. Stand by.
Dobry den. Oh my, Paul, what are you doing?
I knew you didn't recognize that old guy in the back.
What is happening? So you don't, wait, so listen, I have to set the record straight.
Uh-oh.
So Paul Ramsey is the one that told me how to navigate the military. He was my supervisor, guys, let's say 6 of my 10 years in the Air Force.
In Germany?
Yeah, Germany and in San Angelo. And oh, Paul, it's so good to see you.
Good. I'm not going to turn this into a Kevin Carroll roast or anything, but I could tell some
Because I know
stories.
you.
I love you, man. Glad
I love you too. It's so good to see you. How's Gay?
She said to say hello. And my
Please
daughter,
tell her I asked for her.
Sarah's here.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, she is.
She's all grown up now. Hey, Sarah. Oh my gosh.
And
That's awesome.
Warren Haywood said to say hello. And J.J. Graham said to say hello.
Wow.
So
all those stayed there?
Oh, yeah, they're still around. We're still alive.
That's good. I'm glad.
Me too. Love you,
Paul,
buddy.
it's so good to see you. Thank you, man. Love you too. So I'll leave you guys with this last. Randall Gino, you gonna say something?
I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just going to add a little bit to what you have said today, because I really think it's very important that all of us, in whatever position at Angelo State, you know, I had you're one of my 55 plus athletic training students that graduated, and I'm proud of every one of them. But you never know that individual you're dealing with, who you're coming in contact with, what kind of influence, either positive or negative, that you can have on them. And you need to always keep that in mind, particularly, I think, as an instructor, a teacher, whatever. And I just think that's vitally important. Something I've never forgotten, before and after you, that I think that's our calling in life. And I think it's very obvious to everybody that listened today that I'm so glad I didn't mess you up.
Yes,
I love
sir.
you, brother.
I love you too, Randall G. Thank you so much. And one other person I should say, Dr. Croy. She was, and we've stayed close, and she went to Sol Ross and everything. I ended up visiting her there, but she was one of my professors at Angelo State. So I'll leave you guys with these last words. Work for a cause, not for applause. Live life to express, not to impress. Don't strive to get your presence noticed. Just make your absence felt. I appreciate you all. Ram fam, be well. Godspeed. Peace and play.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate your time.
Ciao, Jenny. Be well. Bye.
Bye-bye. So tomorrow, Ram Talks will continue at 9 a.m. We've got a leadership and diversity panel, and would encourage you to tell others, especially students, to be here. It'll be a great first session. And then for all other information,